The doors of the diplomatic chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Jake Morrison straightened in his chair as the alien visitors walked in. He had met many strange species since humans joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. He had shaken hands with beings made of pure energy. He had negotiated with creatures that lived in methane atmospheres. But nothing had prepared him for the Vrecht. They were massive. The lead Vrecht stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in dark blue scales that looked harder than armor plating. His eyes were golden and sharp, the kind of eyes that could see in complete darkness. When he moved, muscles rippled under those scales like steel cables. Behind him, 3 smaller figures followed. They were young ones, maybe teenagers by their species standards. They looked scared. Lieutenant Amy Foster sat beside Jake. She had seen combat on 3 different worlds. She had fought pirates and insurgents. But even she felt a chill when the Vrecht leader turned those golden eyes toward them. These were not beings you wanted as enemies. The lead Vrecht approached slowly. His claws clicked on the metal floor with each step. When he spoke, his voice came out as a deep rumble that made the translator work hard to convert it into human language. "I am called Tornclaw in your language," he said. "I serve as ambassador for my people, but I do not come here today as an ambassador." He paused and something changed in his expression. "I come as a father who has nowhere else to turn." Jake leaned forward. This was unexpected. The Vrecht had a reputation across the galaxy. They were proud. They were fierce. They never asked anyone for help. Their entire culture was built on strength and self-reliance. For one of them to ask for assistance meant something terrible had happened. Tornclaw gestured to the 3 young ones behind him. "These are my children. Chakra is my eldest daughter. Ven is my middle son. Kes is my youngest boy." The 3 cubs moved closer together. They were trying to look brave, but their eyes betrayed their fear. "A sickness has come to our world. It attacks only the young ones, those who have not yet grown into adults. Our doctors cannot stop it. Our medicines do nothing. We have tried everything we know." "How many have died?" Amy asked quietly. "Too many." Tornclaw's voice grew rough. "Thousands already. More fall sick every day. My own children show the first signs. The doctors on my world give them 3 months before the illness becomes fatal." The room fell silent. Jake looked at the 3 young Vrecht. Chakra, the eldest, was trying hard to stand tall like a warrior, but she was shaking. Ven kept his eyes on the floor. Little Kes looked like he wanted to run away and hide. "What do you need from us?" Jake asked. Tornclaw took a deep breath. What he said next came out slowly, as if each word caused him pain. "I need you to take my children. Keep them here. Study them. Find a cure. Your human doctors have done things our people thought impossible. You have saved species we thought were beyond help. You understand biology in ways we do not. You want to leave them with us?" Amy said, making sure she understood correctly. "I must return home. My people need leadership during this crisis. Wars are starting over medicine supplies. Factions are fighting in the streets. If I stay away, everything will collapse into chaos." Tornclaw looked at his children, and for a moment his fierce warrior face softened. "But I cannot watch my cubs die. This is the only chance they have." Jake stood and walked closer to the young Vrecht. Chakra immediately bared her teeth at him. It was a defensive move, not an attack. She was protecting her brothers. Jake stopped a safe distance away. "Do your children understand what you're asking?" he said to Tornclaw. "They understand they are dying. They understand I am trying to save them." The Vrecht father moved beside his daughter and placed one large clawed hand on her shoulder. "But they do not understand why I must leave them with strangers. In our culture, a father who abandons his young is the lowest form of coward. You're not abandoning them," Jake said firmly. "You're doing what any good father would do. You're putting their lives first." Tornclaw made a sound that the translator couldn't process. It might have been a laugh or a sob. "My people would not see it that way. But I have stopped caring what my people think. I only care that my children live." Jake turned to Amy. They had a silent conversation with just their eyes. This was a huge responsibility. These were not human children. They were predators from a warrior culture. They could be dangerous. They might not cooperate with treatment. They might hate humans for taking them from their father. There were 1,000 ways this could go wrong. But they were also dying kids who needed help. "We'll do it," Jake said. "We'll take them to Earth. We have the best xenobiology research center in the human territories. Dr. Lisa Chen runs it. She's saved more alien species than anyone alive. If anyone can find a cure, she can. Tornclaw closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were wet. Jake had never seen a Frecht cry before. He didn't know they could. I give you my children, Commander Morrison. They are all I have. They are the future of my family line. Keep them safe, heal them, and when I return, I hope to see them alive and well. You have my word, Jake said. The next hour was painful to watch. Tornclaw spoke to each of his children privately. Jake and Amy moved to the far side of the room to give them space. Even from a distance, they could see the young ones were crying. Vrecht tears were different from human tears. They were thick and dark, almost like blood. When it was time to leave, Kess, the youngest, wrapped his arms around his father's leg and refused to let go. He was making a high-pitched keening sound that needed no translation. It was the sound of a child who didn't understand why his parent was leaving him. Tornclaw gently pried his son's arms loose. He knelt down to look Kess in the eyes. Be strong, little one. These humans will help you. Trust them as you trust me. I will come back for you. I promise, but Kess just kept crying. Chakra, trying to be the strong older sister, pulled Kess away from their father. She held him close while he sobbed into her shoulder. Ven stood nearby, his fists clenched so tight that his claws dug into his own palms. Tornclaw stood and faced Jake one more time. If they die while in your care, I will not blame you. You are trying to do what we could not. But if they die, I ask one thing. Send me a message before the end. Let me say goodbye. They won't die, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. We'll find a way. After Tornclaw left, the three young Vrecht stood in the middle of the diplomatic chamber looking lost and alone. They were on a human space station, surrounded by a species they barely knew, separated from everything familiar. Their father was gone. Their world was far away. They were sick, scared, and confused. Jake approached them slowly, keeping his movements calm and predictable. My name is Jake Morrison. This is Amy Foster. We're going to take you somewhere safe, somewhere you can get better. Chakra looked at him with those sharp golden eyes. Why should we trust you? Her voice was rough, but her human language was good. You are prey. On our world, your kind would be food. Maybe, Jake said without taking offense. But on our world, we help anyone who needs it. Predator or prey doesn't matter to us. You're sick kids who need doctors. That's all we see. We are not kids, Chakra snapped. We are warriors of the Vrecht. Then act like it, Amy said firmly. Warriors face hard truths. The truth is you're dying. The truth is your father brought you here because this is your only chance. The truth is you can either fight us every step of the way, or you can work with us and maybe survive. Your choice. Chakra bristled at the challenge. For a moment, Jake thought she might attack, but then something changed. The fight went out of her eyes. Her shoulders sagged. She looked down at her little brother still crying in her arms and then at Ven, who looked like he might start crying too. We will cooperate, she said quietly. We will trust you, because we have no other choice. That's a start, Jake said. Now let's get you to Earth, let's get you home. The research facility in Colorado sat high in the mountains, far from major cities. Dr. Lisa Chen stood in the landing bay watching the transport ship touch down. She had received the files about her new patients 3 days ago. 3 wrecked cubs suffering from an unknown illness. Life expectancy of 3 months or less. No known cure. She had spent those 3 days preparing. The facility now had a special habitat that matched the environmental conditions of the Vrecht homeworld. Hot and dry with dim lighting. Elevated platforms for sleeping because Vrecht liked to rest above the ground. All the medical equipment had been reinforced because Vrecht were incredibly strong, even the young ones. The transport ramp lowered. Commander Morrison came out first, followed by Lieutenant Foster. Then came the 3 cubs. Lisa felt her breath catch. They looked terrible. Their scales, which should have been bright and glossy, were dull and flaking. They moved slowly like every step hurt. The youngest one, Kess, according to the files, could barely walk. His sister had to support him. Dr. Chen, Jake said, making introductions. These are your patients. Chakra, Ven, and Kess. Lisa stepped forward slowly. She kept her body language open and non-threatening. Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Chen. You can call me Lisa if you want. I'm going to be taking care of you while you're here. Chakra looked her up and down with those sharp golden eyes. You are small. How can something so small heal us when our own doctors could not? Size doesn't matter much in medicine, Lisa said calmly. What matters is knowledge and care. I promise you'll get both here. Her assistant, Peter Huang, came forward with 3 medical scanners. We need to do some initial tests. It won't hurt. We just need to understand your condition better. Ben stepped back, his lips pulling away from his teeth. You will not touch us with your machines. Okay, Lisa said immediately. We won't touch you if you don't want. But I need you to understand something. Every hour we wait, the illness gets worse. I need data to help you. Will you let me explain what each test does before we do it? Chakra considered this. On their homeworld, cubs had no say in anything. Adults did what they wanted, and cubs obeyed or suffered punishment. But this human doctor was asking permission. It was strange. Explain, Chakra said. Lisa spent the next 20 minutes describing each medical procedure in detail. She showed them the equipment. She let them touch the scanners. She even demonstrated on herself first, showing the readings from her own body on the monitor screens. See? It doesn't hurt. It just takes pictures of the inside of your body, like looking through a window to see what's wrong. Slowly, carefully, the cubs agreed to the tests. Lisa worked with infinite patience. Every time one of them flinched or showed fear, she stopped and waited. She never rushed. She never forced. She just explained and asked and waited for consent. By the time the initial examination was done, 6 hours had passed. Peter looked exhausted, but Lisa seemed energized. She had data now. She had baseline readings. She could start working on understanding this illness. You 3 need rest, she said. Let me show you your rooms. The habitat she had prepared was larger than expected. 3 separate sleeping chambers connected to a common area. Each chamber had the heated rocks Frecht preferred and elevated platforms. But Lisa had also added things from her own knowledge of taking care of young beings. Soft blankets, comfortable cushions, tablets loaded with movies and games and educational programs. What are these? Ben asked, poking at a blanket suspiciously. Humans use them for comfort. They're soft and warm. You don't have to use them if you don't want. They're just there if you need them. Kes, the youngest, touched a blanket carefully with one claw. Then he picked it up and held it against his face. The texture seemed to soothe him. He wrapped it around his shoulders like a cape. You can keep that, Lisa said gently. It's yours now. Over the next few weeks, Lisa established a routine. Every morning at 8 o'clock, she came to their habitat for health checks. She measured their vital signs, took blood samples, and checked for new symptoms. She explained everything she was doing in simple language. She answered every question they asked. But she also did something else. She talked to them like they were people, not just patients. Your cellular structure is really interesting, Chakra. See these markers here? They're different from anything I've seen before. I think that might be the key to understanding your illness. Why do you tell us these things? Chakra asked. We are not doctors. Because it's your body. You have a right to know what's happening to it. Lisa pulled up a chair and sat down at eye level with the cubs. On Earth, we believe patients should be partners in their own care. You're not just sick kids we're fixing. You're individuals with your own thoughts and feelings. Those matter. This concept was revolutionary to the wrecked cubs. On their world, young ones were barely considered real people. They were future warriors being shaped and tested. Their thoughts and feelings were irrelevant until they proved themselves strong enough to survive. But here, this small human doctor treated them with respect. She listened when they spoke. She cared about their comfort. She got upset when they were in pain and happy when they felt better. The breakthrough came in week 4. Lisa had been sitting near Kes's sleeping area, reading through test results on her tablet. She didn't realize the youngest cub was awake and watching her. When she looked up, Kes was staring at her with intense focus. Can't sleep? Lisa asked softly. Kes shook his head. My chest hurts. Not from the sickness. From missing my father. Lisa felt her heart break a little. Come here, she said, patting the floor beside her chair. Let me tell you what I've learned today. Kes climbed down from his platform and sat next to her. Lisa showed him the tablet screen with all its charts and graphs. See this pattern? This is your immune system. It's fighting really hard to protect you. But it's confused. It's attacking the wrong things. That's what the illness does. It makes your body fight itself. Can you fix it? Kes asked in a small voice. I'm working on it. Every day I learn more. Every test gets me closer to an answer. Lisa looked at the young Recht beside her. You're very brave, Kes. Your father would be proud of you. From that night on, Lisa made it a habit to talk to the cubs like equals. She shared her research. She explained her thinking. she admitted when she didn't know something. And slowly the cubs began to trust her completely. Dr. Daniel Brooks, the facility psychologist, visited in week 6. He observed the cubs for several days before approaching Lisa with his thoughts. "They're depressed," he said bluntly. "They're sick, far from home, scared, and they have nothing to do but sit around thinking about dying. They need structure. They need purpose. What do you suggest?" Lisa asked. "Predator species thrive on routine and having jobs to do. Give them responsibilities. Make them feel useful." Lisa took his advice. She started assigning the cubs small tasks. Chakra was put in charge of organizing the medical supply closet. It required careful attention and gave her something to focus on besides her illness. Ven helped catalog the plant samples in the research greenhouse. Kes was given the job of feeding the facility's small research animals. The change was immediate and dramatic. The cubs moved with more purpose. They took pride in their work. They started asking questions about things beyond their own sickness. "Why do humans keep so many different plants?" Ven asked one day while working in the greenhouse. "Because diversity is strength," Lisa explained. "Every plant has something unique to offer. Some provide medicine. Some provide food. Some just make the air better to breathe. We study them all because you never know which one might save a life someday." Ven thought about this. "On my world, we only value strength in fighting. Useful things are respected, but nothing else matters." That sounds like a hard way to live. "It is," Ven admitted quietly. "Everything is always a test. Every day you have to prove you deserve to survive. There is no rest, no peace." Lisa put down her work and gave Ven her full attention. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," Ven said again. "I am tired all the time. Not from the sickness. From always having to be strong. You know what humans believe?" Lisa said. "We think true strength includes knowing when to rest, knowing when to ask for help, knowing when to admit you're scared or tired or sad. Those things don't make you weak. They make you honest." This conversation, and many like it, began to reshape how the cubs saw the world. They started to understand that there were different kinds of strength. Physical power was important, but so was emotional honesty. Fighting ability mattered, but so did the ability to care for others. Lieutenant Amy Foster visited every week to work with them on physical training. But her approach was nothing like what they expected. "Today we're learning control," she announced one morning in the training room. She placed 3 raw eggs on a table. "Pick one up without breaking it." Chakra stared at the eggs like they were weapons. "This is a trick." "No trick. Just a lesson. You have incredible strength. Now learn to control it." It took Chakra 2 hours and 7 broken eggs before she finally managed to cradle one gently in her clawed palm. When she did, she looked up at Amy with something like wonder in her eyes. "Why did you make me do this?" Chakra asked. "Because any fool can destroy something," Amy said. "But it takes real strength to protect something fragile. Remember that. You're not just predators. Your peers 6 months had passed since the cubs arrived at the Colorado facility. The change in them was remarkable. Their bodies had healed, but more than that, they had grown in ways their species had never experienced before. They were becoming something unique in the galaxy. Predators raised with human values. Captain Ryan Matthews, a retired Marine who now worked facility security, took special interest in their development. He was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent 20 years in combat zones. He understood warriors, but he also understood that being a warrior was about more than just fighting. One morning, he gathered the 3 cubs in the training room. They had been working with him for months now, learning human military discipline. But today was different. "All right, team," Ryan said, placing 3 eggs on a table. "New exercise." "We have done the egg exercise," Chakra said. "We can pick them up without breaking them now." "This is different. Today you're going to hold an egg while I try to make you drop it." The cubs looked confused. Ryan smiled and turned to Kes first. "Hold this egg. Don't let it break no matter what I do." Kes carefully picked up the egg and held it in his palm. Then Ryan started talking. He told a story about a battle he had been in where his best friend had died. He described it in detail, making it sad and terrible. Kes's eyes filled with tears. His hand started to shake, but he kept the egg safe. "Good," Ryan said. "Now Ven." Ven took an egg. Ryan suddenly shouted right in his face the way drill sergeants do. Ven flinched hard, but the egg stayed whole in his palm. For Chakra, Ryan did something different. He spoke quietly about her father, about how he must miss his children, about how he might be in danger right now facing the crisis alone. Chakra's face went through a dozen emotions: anger, fear, sadness, worry. Her whole body tensed, but her clawed hand stayed gentle around the egg. When the exercise was done, Ryan sat down with them. "Do you understand what we just learned? That we can hold eggs even when upset?" Ven asked. "That you can control your strength even when your emotions are wild? That's true discipline. Anyone can be calm when nothing is wrong. But a real warrior stays controlled even in the middle of chaos, even when scared or angry or sad. That's what separates professionals from amateurs." Chakra looked at the egg in her palm. "On our world, showing emotions is considered weakness. We are taught to bury them, ignore them, pretend they don't exist. That's not strength. That's just denial," Ryan said. "Humans learned a long time ago that you can't ignore emotions. They exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The strong thing is to feel them fully and still make good choices. You three just proved you can do that." This lesson changed how the cubs saw themselves. They stopped trying to hide their feelings. When Kes missed his father, he said so. When Ven felt frustrated with his medical treatments, he expressed it. When Chakra worried about their homeworld, she talked about her concerns, and they learned that expressing emotions didn't make them weak. It made them honest. And honesty built trust. Nurse Katie Sullivan introduced them to human entertainment during their evening free time. The first movie she showed them was an old animated film about a young athlete who failed repeatedly before finally succeeding at his sport. The cubs were fascinated. They watched the main character lose race after race. They saw him get discouraged. They saw him want to quit, but he kept trying. "Why does he keep going?" Ben asked. "He is clearly not the strongest." "Why not accept defeat?" "Because strength isn't just what you're born with," Katie explained. "It's also what you build through effort. Every time he fails, he learns something. Every loss makes him smarter. By the end, he wins not because he's naturally the best, but because he worked harder than everyone else." This concept was strange to the wrecked cubs. On their world, you were either born strong or you weren't. Weakness was permanent. There was no concept of growth through practice. "So humans believe anyone can become strong?" Chakra asked. "We believe everyone has different strengths and you can always develop new ones. Nobody is born knowing everything. We all start weak and scared and confused. Then we learn and practice and fail and try again. That's how growth works." Over the next weeks, Katie showed them more human stories. Movies about underdogs who won against impossible odds. Books about heroes who protected the weak. Shows about teams who succeeded through cooperation. Every story reinforced the same themes. Kindness is not weakness. Failure is part of learning, and protecting others is the highest form of strength. The cubs began to see their own situation differently. They weren't weak for needing help. They were smart for accepting it. They weren't failures for getting sick. They were survivors for fighting through it. Dr. Brooks, the psychologist, worked with them on understanding and naming emotions. He brought charts that showed different facial expressions. This is what humans look like when we're happy. This is sad. This is angry. This is afraid. Can you make these expressions? The cubs tried. Their faces didn't move exactly like human faces, but they could approximate the emotions. More importantly, they learned to recognize these expressions in others. "Why is this important?" Kes asked. "Because reading emotions helps you understand what others need. If you see someone looking afraid, you know to be gentle. If someone looks sad, you know they might need comfort. This makes you a better teammate, a better friend, a better leader." Brooks also taught them about stress management, breathing exercises, meditation, ways to calm down when feeling overwhelmed. These were completely foreign concepts to wrecked culture, where the response to stress was always aggression or dominance displays. "You're teaching us to control ourselves," Chakra observed during one session. "I'm teaching you to take care of yourselves," Brooks corrected. "Your bodies and minds are tools. Good warriors maintain their tools. You wouldn't ignore damage to your claws or scales, right? Same with your mental state. You have to actively manage it." 8 months into their stay, Dr. Lisa Chen called them into her office with news. "Your latest test came back. The illness is in complete remission. You're cured." The cubs should have been celebrating, but instead they looked worried. Kes spoke first. "Does that mean we have to leave?" Lisa felt a lump in her throat. "Do you want to leave?" "No," all 3 cubs said together. "Then you don't have to. Your father's return has been delayed anyway. There's political trouble on your homeworld. It's not safe for him to come get you yet. Lisa sat down with them. You can stay here as long as you need. This is your home, too. That night, Chakra called a meeting with her siblings in their common area. They sat together on the floor, the way they had learned humans often gathered for serious conversations. We need to talk about what happens when we go back, Chakra said. We're not the same cubs who arrived here. We've learned things our people have never known. We've experienced a way of life that doesn't exist on our world. I don't want to go back to the old way, Kes said quietly. I don't want to fight every day just to prove I deserve to exist. I don't want to hide my feelings. I don't want to hurt others to show I'm strong. Me neither, Ven agreed. But what choice do we have? That's our world. That's our culture. Chakra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, what if we could change it? What if we could show our people that there's another path? We're proof that wrecked cubs can thrive without constant violence and fear. We're healthier now than we ever were at home. They'll think we've been corrupted by the humans, Ven pointed out. They'll say we've become weak. Then we'll prove we're not weak. We'll show them that human strength and wrecked strength can exist together. We'll be warriors who choose when to fight and what to fight for. We'll be strong enough to be kind. The three cubs made a pact that night. They would remember everything they learned on Earth. They would hold on to these lessons even when they returned to a world that didn't understand them. They would be bridges between two cultures, living proof that predators could choose compassion without losing their edge. The next morning, they approached Captain Ryan with a request. We want to train harder. We want to learn everything you can teach us about discipline and teamwork and honor. When we go home, we need to be able to show our people what human warriors are really like. Ryan smiled. You think you're ready for advanced training? We know we are, Chakra said with confidence. All right then, but advanced training means advanced responsibility. You'll be held to higher standards. You'll be expected to help train others. You'll represent not just yourselves, but the humans who taught you. Can you handle that? Yes, sir, all three cubs said together. They had learned to say sir from watching human military videos. They understood it was a sign of respect for authority earned through wisdom rather than violence. Over the next months, their training intensified. They learned formation marching, moving as a unit with perfect synchronization. They learned military protocols and the chain of command. They learned tactical thinking and strategic planning. But everything was taught through the lens of human values. Discipline over dominance, cooperation over competition, protection over predation. They also began helping around the facility in bigger ways. Chakra started assisting Dr. Chen with research, learning advanced Xenob. 14 months had passed since Tornclaw left his cubs on Earth. 14 months of fighting a plague, managing political chaos, and leading his people through the worst crisis in their history. Nearly 40% of wrecked youth had died. Entire family lines had been wiped out. The social structure of his world had been shaken to its core. Through it all, Tornclaw had remained strong. He had made impossible decisions. He had fought against factions who wanted to blame other species for the plague. He had maintained order when everything wanted to collapse into chaos. He had been the perfect wrecked leader, fierce, decisive, and unmoved by emotion. But every night, alone in his quarters, he thought about his cubs. Were they alive? Were they healthy? Had the humans found a cure? Or had he sent his children away to die among strangers? The not knowing ate at him like acid. Finally, the political situation stabilized enough for him to leave. He sent a message ahead to Commander Morrison. I am coming for my children. Prepare them for departure. The journey to Earth felt endless. Tornclaw had changed during these months. New scars crossed his scales. His eyes carried the weight of watching thousands die. He had aged in ways that had nothing to do with time. Leading through crisis had cost him something essential. He wondered if his cubs would even recognize him. Some of his advisors had warned him before he left. The humans may have made your cubs soft. They may have filled their heads with weak ideas about peace and cooperation. You may need to retrain them in proper wrecked ways. Tornclaw didn't care. He just wanted them alive. Everything else could be dealt with later. His ship docked at the Colorado facility on a clear autumn morning. Commander Morrison and Dr. Chen were waiting at the landing bay. Their expressions were neutral, professional. Tornclaw couldn't read what they were thinking. "Ambassador Tornclaw," Jake greeted him formally. "Welcome back to Earth. Your children are waiting for you." "Are they well?" Tornclaw asked, his voice rough from weeks of shouting orders. "See for yourself," Lisa said, gesturing toward the exit. They led him through corridors to an outdoor training field. Tornclaw's heart pounded in his chest. He was about to see his cubs for the first time in over a year. Would they be angry at him for leaving? Would they blame him for missing so much of their lives? Then he stepped outside and stopped dead. His 3 cubs stood in the center of the field, but they weren't the scared, sick younglings he had left behind. They stood tall and healthy, their scales gleaming in the sunlight. They wore simple uniforms adapted to their physiology, dark blue with silver trim. And they stood in formation, perfectly aligned, back straight, eyes forward. Tornclaw had seen military formations before. The Rekth had warriors who moved in coordinated groups. But those formations were built on dominance and fear. Warriors stayed in line because the punishment for breaking formation was severe. This was different. His cubs stood with a discipline that came from within, a control that was chosen rather than forced. Captain Ryan Matthews stood to the side. He called out a command in human military language. The cubs moved as one, going through a series of exercises that displayed both their natural Vrecht power and remarkable control. Every movement was precise, every motion had purpose. They didn't waste energy on aggressive displays. They simply moved with efficient, deadly grace. Then they stopped, turned as one unit, and approached their father. Tornclaw tensed, expecting the traditional Rekth greeting, a challenge, a test of strength, some kind of dominance display to reestablish hierarchy. Instead, his cubs stopped in front of him and did something he had never seen any young Rekth do. They saluted, a crisp, precise human military salute. "Father," Chakra said, her voice steady and clear, "we are honored by your return. We request permission to report on our training and recovery." Tornclaw felt the world shift under his feet. This wasn't weakness. This wasn't his cubs transformed into something pathetic and soft. This was something his entire culture had no words for. Discipline without cruelty. Respect that was given freely. Strength that didn't need to prove itself through violence. "Permission granted," he managed to say. What followed was the most remarkable hour of Tornclaw's life. His cubs led him through the facility, showing him everything they had learned. Chakra explained human concepts of leadership through service rather than domination. Ven demonstrated the medical knowledge he had gained, discussing their illness and cure with the casual confidence of someone who truly understood the subject. Kess showed him the facility's greenhouse and explained ecological balance, the concept that even predators needed healthy ecosystems to survive. But the most powerful moment came in the medical wing. A small alien, some kind of prey species that Tornclaw didn't recognize, was being treated for injuries. The creature saw Tornclaw and immediately cowered in fear. His size, his teeth, his claws, everything about him screamed predator. Then Kess, his smallest cub, stepped between them. He lowered his body and spoke in a gentle voice. "It's okay, small one. This is my father. He won't hurt you. We protect patients here. Everyone is safe." The small creature looked up at Kess, at this young Frecht who was being gentle and protective, and slowly relaxed. Tornclaw watched his son comfort a being that would have been prey on their homeworld. Watched him use his strength to make someone feel safe rather than afraid. Something broke inside Tornclaw's chest. All the emotions he had suppressed for 14 months came flooding up. The fear of losing his children, the guilt of leaving them, the weight of watching so many other cubs die, the exhaustion of maintaining the cold warrior face that his culture demanded. His eyes filled with the thick, dark tears of his species. "What have you done to my children?" he asked Dr. Chen, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa met his gaze steadily, without fear. "We showed them they could be everything their nature designed them to be, strong, fierce, powerful. But we also showed them they could be something their culture never allowed. Kind. They're still predators, Ambassador. They're still Vrecht. They're just Vrekt who understand that true strength includes the choice of when to show teeth and when to show heart. Tornclaw looked at his cubs, really looked at them. They were healthy and strong, stronger than they would have been on their homeworld. But more than that, they were confident in a way Vrekt cubs never were. They carried themselves with dignity that didn't come from defeating others. They had pride that came from within, rather than from proving themselves superior. "I left them here to be healed of a sickness," he said slowly. "I did not know they would teach me that my entire species has been sick in a different way." That evening they shared a meal together. The cubs had prepared food, both traditional Vrekt dishes and human meals they had learned to make. As they ate, they talked. Not with the formal distance that Vrekt culture demanded between parent and child, but with real warmth and connection. Kes, his youngest, did something that would have been unthinkable on their homeworld. He reached across the table and placed his hand over his father's. "We missed you, Father. We're glad you're safe. We're glad you're here." Physical affection, expressed emotion, vulnerability without shame. These were things that didn't exist in Vrekt culture. Touch was for fighting or mating, never for comfort. Feelings were weaknesses to be hidden, not shared. But here was his son, offering comfort and love without fear. And Tornclaw, who had stayed stone-faced through the deaths of thousands, found himself crying openly. He turned to his cubs with wonder in his eyes. "How did you become so brave?" "The humans taught us," Chakra said simply. "They taught us that admitting fear doesn't make you a coward, that asking for help doesn't make you weak, that showing love doesn't make you vulnerable. They taught us that the bravest thing is to be honest about who you are and what you feel." After dinner, the cubs showed their father the presentation they had been working on, a proposal for cultural exchange between Earth and their homeworld, a new approach to raising Vrekt youth that combined their species' warrior traditions with human emotional intelligence and cooperative values. "We don't want to erase who we are," Van explained. "We're proud to be Vrekt. We're proud of our strength and our heritage. But we also see now that our culture has been limiting us. We could be so much more." The proposal was detailed and thoughtful. It suggested starting with small groups of young Vrekt coming to Earth for education, creating mixed training programs where humans and Vrekt learned from each other, developing new approaches to conflict resolution that honored Vrekt values while incorporating human psychology. "This is revolutionary," Tornclaw said quietly. "This would change everything about how we raise our young, how we structure our society, how we see ourselves." "Yes," Chakra agreed. "It would. And it needs to change, Father. The plague proved that. Our cubs were dying not just from disease but from stress, from constant fear and competition, from never being allowed to just be children. That has to stop." Tornclaw sat back, overwhelmed. His cubs had grown in ways he never imagined possible. They had been transformed but not weakened. They had been given new tools, new perspectives, new possibilities. And now they wanted to bring those gifts back to their people. Many will resist, he warned. Traditional factions will see this as contamination. They'll fight against any change. "Then we'll show them," Chakra said with quat. The journey home took 3 weeks. Tornclaw spent most of it watching his children, still amazed by who they had become. They maintained the routines they had learned on Earth. Every morning they exercised together, not in violent combat drills but in coordinated movements that built strength and teamwork. They held group discussions where everyone's opinion mattered equally. They even practiced meditation, something that would have been considered bizarre and useless on their homeworld. But they also studied their own history and culture. They practiced traditional Vrekt combat forms. They spoke their native language with pride. The humans hadn't erased their identity. They had expanded it, given them tools to be both fully Vrekt and something more. As the ship approached their homeworld, Tornclaw grew concerned. "You must understand," he told his cubs. "Our people are suffering. The plague killed so many young ones. Everyone is grieving and angry. They're looking for someone to blame. Some blame the other species who didn't help fast enough. Some blame our own leadership for not finding a cure sooner. The society you're returning to is broken and bitter. Then we'll help fix it," Chakra said with calm confidence. "That's what we learned on Earth. When something is broken, you don't just accept it. You work to make it better. They may not want to hear what you have to say. They may see your new ways as weakness or betrayal. Then we'll show them we're not weak, Ven said. We'll prove that the human way of strength is just as valid as the Vrecht way, maybe more so. The landing ceremony was large. The High Council had insisted on a public return. Thousands of Vrecht citizens gathered at the landing platform, eager to see the cubs who had survived when so many others had died. The mood was tense. Tornclaw could feel the grief and anger in the air like a physical presence. The ship's ramp lowered. Tornclaw stepped out first, followed by his 3 cubs. A hush fell over the crowd. The cubs moved with a bearing that was both familiar and alien. They held their heads high with warrior pride, but there was something else. A calmness, a confidence that didn't come from defeating others. They walked down the ramp in formation, moving as a single unit, their steps synchronized perfectly. High Counselor Krav, the most traditional and powerful leader on the council, approached. He was old and scarred, with eyes that had seen centuries of battles. He looked at the cubs with obvious suspicion. So these are the younglings raised by the prey species, Krav said loudly, making sure the crowd could hear. Tell me, cubs, have the humans made you soft? Have you forgotten what it means to be Vrecht? The crowd leaned in, waiting to see how the cubs would respond. Tornclaw tensed, ready to intervene, but Chakra stepped forward calmly. She met Krav's gaze directly, something young Vrecht never did to elders. On their world, such a look was a challenge that often ended in violence. But Chakra's voice was respectful, even as she stood her ground. High Counselor, the humans taught us many things. They taught us that true strength is not the absence of gentleness, but the choice to employ it. They taught us that a warrior who can control their power is more dangerous than one who cannot. And they taught us that protecting the weak is more honorable than preying upon them. She gestured to her siblings. We return to you alive when 40% of our generation died. We return with knowledge that could prevent future plagues. We return with new skills and new understanding. We are proud members of our species, but we are also proof that we can evolve without losing what makes us strong. Krav's eyes narrowed. Bold words, but I wonder if you can back them with action, or have you forgotten how to fight? He moved so fast that most of the crowd didn't see it coming. A traditional dominance test, a lunge meant to test reflexes and courage. Most young Vrecht would either flinch back in fear or respond with wild aggression. Chakra did neither. She moved with the precise efficiency Captain Ryan had taught her, sidestepping the attack and redirecting Krav's momentum with minimal force. In one smooth motion, she ended up behind him in a position of clear advantage. From there, she could have struck any number of killing blows. Instead, she simply stepped back and resumed her previous stance. Her breathing was calm and even. On Earth, she said clearly, we learned that showing mercy is not weakness when you possess the power to destroy. I could have injured you, High Counselor. I chose not to. That choice is strength. That choice is control. That choice proves I am more than just instinct and aggression. The crowd erupted, some in anger, shouting that she had disrespected an elder, others in confusion, unable to process what they had just witnessed. But many, especially the younger Vrecht, looked at Chakra with something like wonder. She had shown perfect combat ability and perfect restraint in the same moment. Krav slowly turned to face her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. The old warrior's scarred face split into a smile. Interesting, he said. Very interesting indeed. Perhaps these humans have taught you something worth knowing after all. Over the following days, the cubs became the center of intense debate. They were invited to speak at warrior academies, where they demonstrated human training methods. They visited medical facilities where Ven shared what he had learned about stress-related illness. They met with educators and discussed new approaches to raising young Vrecht. The response was mixed. Traditional factions denounced them as corrupted by alien influence. Conservative elders warned that adopting human ways would destroy what made the Vrecht strong. But others listened with open minds. The breakthrough came when the cubs were invited to speak at a gathering of plague survivors. The room was filled with young Vrecht who had lost siblings, friends, entire family groups. They were traumatized and angry, with no cultural tools to process their grief. Kes spoke to them, his voice gentle but clear. I know what you're feeling. When we first got sick, I was terrified. I thought I was going to die far from home, surrounded by strangers. I was angry at my father for leaving me. I was angry at the universe for making me suffer. The young survivors leaned in, recognizing their own feelings in his words. But the humans taught me something. They taught me that feeling afraid doesn't make you weak. That being sad doesn't make you a failure. That needing help doesn't make you pathetic. These feelings are normal. They're your mind trying to process something terrible. And the brave thing is to admit them, to talk about them, to work through them instead of burying them until they poison you from the inside. He looked around the room at the scarred, grieving young faces. We lost too many of our generation. That's a fact we can't change. But we can change what we do with our grief. We can let it make us bitter and violent. Or we can let it make us determined to build a better world, one where future generations don't have to suffer like we did. One young female stood up.
How? How do we do that?
Our culture doesn't prepare us for this kind of pain. That's exactly right, Chakra said, standing beside her brother. Our culture doesn't have the tools. But other cultures do. The humans have spent thousands of years learning how to process trauma, how to support each other through grief, how to build strength from vulnerability. We can learn from them without becoming them. We can take what works and adapt it to our own values. Over the following weeks, the Cubs ran workshops teaching emotional regulation techniques, breathing exercises to manage anger, group discussions where feelings could be shared without judgment, physical activities that release stress without violence, methods for supporting friends who were struggling. The young survivors absorbed these lessons desperately. They were drowning in feelings they had no way to process, and the Cubs were offering them lifelines. But the Cubs also worked with the warrior academies, showing that emotional intelligence didn't make you soft. Ven demonstrated how understanding fear made you better in combat, because you could recognize when enemies were about to panic. Chakra showed how team coordination worked better when warriors actually communicated, instead of just competing. Kes proved that protective instincts made you a more effective fighter than pure aggression. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Traditional warriors watched the Cubs in action and had to admit they were effective. Parents who had lost children to the plague saw the Cubs teaching survivors healthy coping methods and felt hope. Political leaders recognized that the Cubs' proposals for cultural reform actually addressed real problems in their society. 6 months after returning home, Chakra stood before the High Council with a formal proposal, a cultural exchange program with Earth. Small groups of young Vrecht would spend time in human facilities, learning their methods while maintaining their own identity. Human educators would come to their world to train Vrecht teachers in new approaches. The two species would share knowledge while respecting each other's differences. The debate was fierce. Conservative counselors argued it would corrupt their culture. Progressive ones countered that their culture needed to evolve or die. The vote came down to a single deciding voice. High Counselor Krav. The old warrior stood slowly. I have lived for 3 centuries. I have fought in countless battles. I have seen our people survive disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. But I have never dared